Hello, everybody. Today, am I live? Yeah. So today we're going to start this tale of Shiva's and Sati. Shiva and Sati's tale. So let me just. Oh, you got a hurricane, Melissa. So let me just start with this introductory paragraph. That was from the last chapter. The last chapter ended by Maitreya telling Vidura that Bhava's wife, Sati, was perfectly devoted to her divine husband, but her father hated that faultless god. This made Sati so disgusted that she destroyed her own body by her yogic powers. Thus the marriage ended before it could reach maturity, and Sati could not give Bhava a child with the excellent qualities that she possessed. So now we start the story. When he heard that her father Daksha had ruined her marriage, Vidura asked. So Vidura is a little shocked. This is actually the story of Shiva and Sati. Is the story of the first problem with in-laws. And it's also it's really the first complicated marriage. But actually, there's no problem in the marriage itself. But it's with the extended family that there's a complication. And it's the first problem with in-laws. And it's a pretty big problem. So Vidura is like, tell me about this. Vidura asks, Bhava is the best among the virtuous, and Daksha was affectionate towards his daughters. So how could he have done something so hateful and uncaring to his own daughter? So his first question is, wait a minute, Daksha is a loving father. Why would he mess up his daughter's marriage? His second question is, Bhava or Shiva is great. Why would Daksha hate him? So Vidura continues, Bhava is calm, self-satisfied, and inimical to no one. And even if he did have a fault, he's the guru of everyone and everything. Who could possibly feel hatred towards that great deity of the world? Even if he made a mistake or something, you would forgive him, not hate him, because of all the great things that he did. So Vidura's like, I don't understand. Why would Daksha hate Bhava to the extent that he would screw up his beloved daughter's marriage so far that she would wind up killing herself? Got to tell me this story. O Brahmana, Vidura concluded, please tell me the story of the argument between the son-in-law and the father-in-law. It's the father-in-law, actually. It didn't really begin with the mother-in-law. Nowadays, it's more like the mother-in-law is the dreaded figure. But in this original story of problems with in-laws, it's not between the wife and the mother-in-law, it's between the husband and the father-in-law. So please tell me the story of the argument between the son-in-law and the father-in-law, which caused Sati to throw away the life that we all cling to. So now here comes the story. Are you ready? This is one of the best stories in all of the Puranas. So the story starts off explaining. It's going to start off with an incident that tries to isolate the root of where Daksha hated Shiva. But you'll learn from the story that there's a deeper root. I don't know if I should tell you right away or if I should let it be a spoiler. I'm not going to spoil it. Let's just read the story and see how it goes. But I'll bring some things to your attention as we read it. So here's the story. Once, the creators of the cosmos assembled with all the greatest sages, immortals, scholar-led schools of philosophers, and fire gods. So there was once upon a time this big assembly of incredibly important and powerful entities. So they're all assembled there. People like Brahma, Shiva, all the 45 fire gods, all kinds of Indras, and everybody are there. When Sati's father Daksha entered, the sages saw that he was as brilliant and luminous as the sun, making the entire assembly shine without darkness. So in this great assembly of incredibly powerful people, in walks Daksha, more powerful than anybody else, brilliantly shining like the sun. Even the fire gods were deeply impressed by his effulgent luster, and everyone in the assembly stood up respectfully from their seats. So picture Daksha. Now, Daksha is the son of Brahma, and a little backstory on Daksha is that Brahma actually made him the foremost Brahmana. So Daksha is the leader of the Brahmanas, and he's the most expert in following the Vedas, implementing the Vedas, using the Vedic technologies, doing the ceremonies. So he's become so powerful by that his power is rivaling even the greatest of the gods. He walks into the assembly of all these incredible gods, and he outshines them. All of them stand up. Can you imagine, like, if you were an architect and you went to the meeting of the architects, and as soon as you walk in the room, every single architect in the room stands up to greet you. That's the situation that Daksha was in. So everybody stands up respectfully to greet Daksha. Everyone except two people. Two people don't stand up. The creator Brahma and the destroyer Shiva. I wonder why Brahma and Shiva didn't stand up. Well, it's because they're superior to everybody else. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are in a class by themselves. So they're not standing up to respect Daksha, because that would be awkward. So they remain seated. Now let's see how Daksha reacts to this. Being so nicely welcomed by the leaders of the assembly, the blessed, attractive Daksha then goes and pays his respects to unborn Brahma, who's the guru of all. Brahma is Daksha's father. So the father is not going to get up and touch the feet of the son, worship the son as the son enters. It's vice versa. The junior respects the senior. So Brahma remains seated. And how does Daksha react? Fine, makes perfect sense to him. This is my father. So after accepting the respects of everybody, he goes over and pays his respects to Brahma. Then, on Brahma's request, Daksha took a seat. But as he was sitting down, he noticed. What do you think he noticed? That there was another person who was already sitting down. He noticed the gentle but dirty Shiva, who was already seated, never having stood up to respect him. Gentle but dirty. Dirty, dirty, dirty. This is always what Daksha is going to notice about Shiva, is how he's dirty. Daksha could not tolerate this. This infuriated Daksha. Now, how come Brahma, remaining seated, seemed perfectly fine to Daksha, and Shiva remaining seated infuriated him? Because Brahma is Daksha's father, but Daksha is Shiva's father-in-law. So in his mind, Shiva should have been acting like his son. So Daksha, all he sees is dirt and family relations. Daksha's eyes are on external details. That's why he's Daksha, which means he's refined and detailed. He only sees external details. This is what his problem is going to be when it comes to relating to Shiva. He's not seeing Shiva as the destroyer of the universe. He's seeing Shiva as his son-in-law. So he gets infuriated by the fact that Shiva didn't stand up to greet him. He glared directly at Shiva as if he was trying to burn him. It began to speak harshly. Great sages, please hear me. Divinities and fire gods, please listen too. I will speak about the ways of good conduct. Miss Manners, that's what he is. Those annoying people that are just so into the manners, and your manners are blah, 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 blah. Virgo times 1,000,000,000 people, that's Daksha. So he says, now I'm going to tell you about good manners. Good manners. He's going to talk to Shiva about good manners. So, seeing Daksha staring intently at Shiva while saying this, everyone became nervous. Oh no, this guy he is gonna do something terrible. He's gonna lecture Shiva on external manners with anger because he's been disrespected. Boo-hoo. Every single person in this assembly stood up to respect you. Except this one guy, and now you're so bent out of shape about it. So they tried to stop him. But he did not want them to interrupt, so he said, no. I'm not speaking out of hatred. I'm just unable to ignore the facts. This is a common excuse that I have given many times, people give many times when you're about to just release all your anger. Your common excuse is, no, I'm not talking out of anger. I'm just telling you the facts. And then, blah, the anger comes out. So glaring continuously. You'll see why he's dirty. He's dirty. Try to figure out why he's dirty. You'll see about Shiva. The story will teach you everything about Shiva. So he's now, Daksha does not take his eyes off Shiva the whole time he's talking. This has happened to me a few times. Actually, one of the first times that I ever went to a Hare Krishna temple. Maybe the third time I went to a Hare Krishna temple, I was still terrified. The entire time the sannyasi was talking, he just only looked at me. So this kind of, it's very, very, very unnerving. But anyway, Daksha doesn't take off his eyes off Shiva for 1 minute. Staring intently at Shiva while saying this, glaring continuously at Shiva, Daksha declared, this one shamelessly ruins the glories of those who protect the world. This guy right here ruins the glories of this whole assembly. All of you people behave properly. You showed me respect. And Brahma also behaved properly by allowing me to show him respect. But this one right here, this dirty fellow, you shouldn't have him here with you. He's a stain on your canvas. He's ruining your reputation. His pride pollutes the paths of good behavior. Pollutes the paths of good behavior. He accepted a position as my dependent. Now he's going to explain what I told you before about the father-in-law thing. He accepted a position as my dependent by pretending to be a good man and taking the hand of my daughter in a proper marriage performed by learned priests with sacred fire and mantra, but this was all a sham. In fact, his deceitful monkey eyes stole the hand of my honest doe-eyed daughter. This guy is talking to Shiva. He just calls Shiva monkey eyes. So, wow, this guy's really confident in his power. So, look at what he's saying. He's saying this guy took a position as my son. He became my son-in-law. But now you can all see that he's a cheater. He never really accepted that position. Otherwise, he would treat me like a father when I come in. So, a little bit of backstory. Oh, he's going to give the backstory. And then he tells you about this thing. He says he pretended to be good by doing a real marriage. Typically, a person who's dirty who won't follow social norms. But the person like Daksha, who's so perfect, will always follow every social norm. So his eyes are on this point. This guy tricked me by pretending to be a good guy, but because he would follow the social norms to marry my daughter. But look, he actually didn't really do it properly. He actually performed a kidnap. He actually kidnapped my daughter. So let me just read it to you one more time. He accepted a position as my dependent by pretending to be a good man and taking the hand of my daughter in a proper marriage, performed by learned priests with sacred fire and mantra, but this was all a sham. His deceitful monkey eyes stole the hand of my honest, doe-eyed daughter. There's another interesting thing here, how love can lead to hate. And how love mixed with ego becomes really destructive. He loves his daughter, but loses sight of that love. Is actually, he feels more insulted. The whole thing begins with his love of his daughter and him thinking that she doesn't deserve this guy. She deserves something way better than this guy. But it's not about her. It's about him. My daughter shouldn't marry this vagabond. It is obvious that he does not truly accept me as his father-in-law, for he refuses to show me any honor by rising from his seat or even saying anything at all to welcome me. That's right, Miss Vinay. That's why she commits suicide. But she's not here right now. I did not want to give my dear daughter to him, for he breaks all rules. Now you hear a little bit about Shiva. He breaks all rules, follows no norms, and is proud and filthy. Giving my daughter to him was like giving philosophy to a construction worker. Another Brahminical quality. You are not qualified. You are just a worker. He lives amidst corpses, surrounded by horrible ghosts and spirits. He wanders naked, laughing and crying like a lunatic, and doesn't comb his hair. He bathes in the ash of funeral pyres and dresses in a necklace of bones and skulls from the dead. His name is Shiva. Shiva means auspicious. But Daksha says the only auspicious thing about him is his name, which indirectly is very true. His name is the only thing auspicious about this inauspicious creature. It's not the only thing that's auspicious, but it's the most auspicious thing that even Daksha couldn't manage to insult. Only lunatics would love this lunatic who protects the most insane creatures. That's Shiva. He protects the insane. He protects the lunatics. He protects the monsters. He protects the monstrous. He is dear only to those whose own soul is as dark as his. Man, I gave my superb daughter... Why is he so upset? Because he gave his superb daughter, his final daughter, his youngest daughter, the culmination of all of his endeavor as a father, to this guy who lives in a crematorium. I give my superb daughter to this ill-hearted, impure master of madness, only because our supreme leader Brahma ordered it. So here's a little backstory. The backstory is Sati, which means virtue, wanted to marry Shiva, which is auspiciousness, or Pava, which is realness. Virtue wanted to marry realness, so it's not going to go with Daksha's type of lifestyle, which is the external superficiality of purity and virtue. So, but his daughter Sati wanted to marry Bhava, realness. He didn't want that. But Brahma stepped in, his father stepped in and says, your daughter wants to marry this guy. Don't get in the way. So he had to obey because his father came in and stepped in on behalf of his granddaughter. So he said, okay, I will let my daughter marry this guy, but only if he demonstrates that he's going to live a proper life. So he refuses to do rituals, he refuses to follow norms, etc., follow rules. If he wants to marry my daughter, he has to do a proper Vedic marriage. So Shiva said, okay. So he did a proper Vedic marriage. And then they got married, and now this happens. Even after, now Shiva is sitting there hearing all this from Daksha in front of hundreds of gods. How does Shiva react? Thank you, Bardo, by the way. Even after all this criticism, the mountain dweller Shiva remained quiet and did not retaliate. He just sat there and listened to it. Actually, what you'll find out later, what Shiva is going to explain to Sati, is he was hardly even listening. Angry Daksha, on the other hand, ritually sprinkled himself with drops of water to pronounce a curse. So he starts to perform a ritual to deliver a serious curse. And now he delivers this curse on Shiva. Shiva doesn't even retaliate, and Daksha keeps going forward more. And this is Brahma's curse. Whenever sacrifice is offered to the gods, this is all he cares about. He just thinks about sacrifices. Whenever sacrifice is offered to the gods, Indra and his followers will receive the portions, but Bhava shall not. For he is a god unfit to be counted amongst the gods. So, hence, if you ever have a chance to see Vedic rituals properly done, or just read about them or whatever, I would say it's 99.8% of them completely exclude Shiva. He's never given sacrifice, which is perfect for him. He doesn't want that. So this is why it's traced to this incident where Daksha, who is the chief Brahmana, the chief performer of rituals, curses Shiva that he won't get any benefit from the rituals. Yep. The leaders of the assembly had tried to stop Daksha from pronouncing this curse, but this only made him more angry. And since people were trying to stop him from, don't give a curse. Then as soon as after he gave the curse, he just stormed out. He stormed out of the assembly and went home. The leaders of the assembly, I'm sorry, Shiva was not angry. Shiva is actually really the coolest guy you can imagine. He's not the original bad boy, I think. Because he's not a bad boy. He's on a different level. Shiva was not angry. How can you not get angry after you get treated like this? Compare Shiva to Daksha. Every single person stood up, respected Daksha, greeted him, etc. And one guy didn't do it right, and Daksha totally lost his marbles. And Shiva gets insulted, spat at, thrown curses at, everything, and Shiva is just totally calm. Shiva was not angry, but his great devotee Nandishwar became red-eyed and blinded by rage. This is another principle. That it's said that when you do sadhu ninda, which means like what Daksha did to Shiva, insulting a great person, the sadhu doesn't become angry, but the people connected with the sadhu get really furious. And you actually suffer, the backlash that you suffer isn't really from the sadhu that you insult, but from the followers of the sadhu. So this is illustrated here. This is illustrated here. Shiva didn't get angry, but Nandishwar, who's his great devotee, became furious. And he pronounced a terrible curse upon Daksha and all the Brahmanas who did not protest Daksha's behavior. So now, Shiva's just quiet, but one of his main friends, Nandishwar, is going to retaliate against Daksha. This is another thing. Generally, the follower of the sadhu is not as great as the sadhu. So the sadhu can tolerate all these things without getting disturbed. The followers, they get disturbed. So the followers, he counter curses Daksha and the Brahmins. Any Brahmin that didn't protest is going to be affected by this curse. So not every Brahmana gets affected by this curse, but the vast majority do. And here's the curse. And if you know anything about Brahmanas, this will make you laugh. Nandishwara's curse. You who are so superficial and external that you bear hatred towards Shiva, a blessed being who hates no one, you will become fools, completely ignorant of philosophical truths. Brahmana means intelligent, comprehensive. You comprehend the Vedas. So I curse you that all you comprehend is the external filigree, fluff, fuzz on the outside of everything. You will have no philosophical truth. You will make a mockery of righteousness while actually being completely addicted to mundane pleasures that are common to any ordinary household. Like eating. That's all you people want to do is eat. That's my little insert. Without any true realization, your comprehension of the Veda will be limited to rituals that promise materialistic, selfish gains. That's all. The whole Veda to you is going to become all about rituals to get materialistic results. Daksha is already such a fool. There's no need for this curse because you're already turning into this. His intellect is external and he mistakes the body for himself. Not knowing his true self-interest, he is like an animal interested only in reproducing with women. Therefore, he should look like an animal. So I curse him to soon have the head of a goat. He has the learning of an intellect of an ignorant fool. This is an interesting point. He has the learning and intellect of an ignorant fool. So fools can have learning and intellect. What would make the learning and intellect belong to a fool? He explains. He has the learning and intellect of an ignorant fool, dull and obsessed with selfish deeds. Intellect and learning obsessed with selfish deeds is the intellect of a fool. This is why I say all the so-called spiritual people on YouTube or whatever writing their books who are telling you how to get your man or get your woman or get your money by this spiritual process are a bunch of ignorant fools. That's not spiritualism. That's the intelligence and learning and spirituality of ignorant fools. Therefore, he shall suffer again and again in this world of birth and death. That's the result. You want to get your man, you want to get your woman, you want to get your ideal, this and that. Good. Here you go. There's your stuff. There's your world. Enjoy it. It's a world of birth and death. And those who tolerated his insults towards gentle Shiva will suffer the same fate. Anyone who bears hatred towards the destroyer shall become a bewildered fool, intoxicated by the honey fragrance of the Vedas' enchanting promises of material power and pleasure. You foolish so-called Brahmanas will eat anything and everything just to nourish your fat bellies. Fat bellies. Just look at a Brahmana. They're always fat. Why are they always fat? You foolish so-called Brahmanas will eat anything and everything just to nourish your fat bellies, and you will pursue so-called learning, austerity, and vows just to earn money, to lavish upon your body and senses. May you wander in this world like beggars. Nandishwara delivers a heavy, heavy curse. Now, here comes the counter curse. When Bhrigu is one of the Brahmanas, the great Brahmanas. When Bhrigu, he's also Daksha's brother. When Bhrigu heard these curses upon the twice-born Brahmanas, he retaliated with the Brahmana's weapon, an inescapable curse of punishment. He is a little bit furious that Nandishwara used a curse against Brahmanas because the weapon of Brahmanas is to curse. So now he's going to curse the followers of Shiva. And now, if you know Shivites, this will also make you laugh. So here's Brigu's counter curse. An inescapable curse of punishment to the followers of Shiva. Heretics and hypocrites. How do you spell the word hypocrite? Heretics and hypocrites shall be they who follow the ways of Shiva. Whoa, heavy curse. Heretics and hypocrites shall be they who follow the ways of Shiva. You can't follow the ways of Shiva. You're not in Shiva's class. You can't act like Shiva. You acting like Shiva is like me trying to act like Zeus. I'm not Zeus. I don't have Zeus's power. Far wandered be they from the true path of Scripture. Lost be their cleanliness. Dulled be their minds. By tangling their hair and wearing bones and ashes, they will think themselves Shiva's disciples. You're just imitating Shiva. But their true God will be Ram. Bumbolenat. That's a Shiva. That's a Shivite. Their true God will be Ram or Ganja. Indeed, what need is there for my curses? You are already such heretics. Since you so vehemently criticize the Veda and the Vedists who uphold it for humanity. Look how you criticize the Veda. You said they're all about material things. Look how you criticize the Brahmanas. You say all we care about is eating. You're already heretics. You're already blasphemers. But I curse you to remain blasphemers. The Veda are the true Shiva, the true and eternal auspicious path. You want to worship Shiva, you better respect the Vedas. These paths were established in antiquity, and their authority rests directly upon Janardhan and Vishnu. Now, in the background, Shiva finally opens his ears. Hearing this, these paths were established in antiquity. So saying, how can you criticize the Veda? And this is similar. Nandishwar was not criticizing the Veda, and he was not criticizing the followers of the Veda. But Brigu takes that he was. This happens a lot. Nandishwar was saying, the Vedas are deep and philosophical, and you will not understand the deep philosophical part of it. You will just take it as a superficial thing. Brigu says, how can you criticize the Veda as being superficial and the followers of the Veda as being superficial? This Veda was established by Vishnu. If you're criticizing the Veda, you're criticizing Vishnu. When Shiva hears this, he starts to pay attention. There's no need for my curses, because heresy is the natural result of blaspheming the eternally valid paths of the supremely pure Veda. It is in such heresy that you will consider Shiva, the Lord of monsters, as your God. Blessed Bhava listened to Brigu's curses, but when he heard the mention of Vishnu, he meekly stood up without a word and left, followed by his followers. This is very interesting. As soon as Brigu brings Vishnu into the argument, Shiva says, enough is enough. I'm getting out of here. And he just quietly leaves. He's listening. This is interesting. What's going on here? People are criticizing each other. There's truth in everything that they're saying. Now they're bringing Vishnu into an argument between people. Now that's bad taste. That is poor taste. Don't bring Vishnu into your egotistical argument. And people do this all the time, and it's disgusting. They're arguing with somebody else, and then they bring up the name of their guru. Just don't drag your guru into this personal argument that you have with somebody. Don't drag Krishna or Vishnu or Shiva into your personal affairs and your anger and stuff. So as soon as Shiva heard Vishnu get dragged into this angry situation, he left. Now, what did they do with this ritual? They were supposed to perform a ritual. It says, even in the absence of Shiva, Daksha, and all their followers, the other creators of the cosmos carried out their elaborate ceremony for 1,000 years, keeping Hari as their foremost object of worship. This is also really quite interesting, because the purpose of the ritual was to worship Vishnu. So there was this big disaster prior to the ritual beginning where half the participants left, but they didn't cancel the ritual to Vishnu. The Vishnu is more important than Shiva and Daksha, who got up. Well, Shiva didn't get upset, but to Shiva's followers and Daksha and his followers who all left. So whatever, we still have to do this ritual for Vishnu. It's also very interesting. That's the end of that chapter. The next chapter, Baba goes home, Shiva goes home, and some time goes by, and you're gonna see a conversation between Sati and Shiva. And in that conversation, Shiva's going to give a little bit of explanation as to what happened here in the story that you just heard. But we'll save that for Monday. And let me see if you have stuff here to reply to or answer. Yeah, Miss Vinay, that's true. You see, curses are really... When there's two kinds of curses, actually. Sometimes you will find true sadhus deliver a curse, but they do so without anger. And they do so with a very peaceful mind and a smile. For example, Narada often curses people very pleasantly. So Narada cursed these two guys to become trees once, but they became trees in Krishna's courtyard. Stuff like that. When done from love, then everything has a good result, even a curse or a punishment. When done from love, and it has a smile behind it, it has a entirely different flavor. The curses happening here in this story are not out of love; they're out of anger. Even frankly, on Nandishwar's side, it's just out of anger. He shouldn't have retaliated. Shiva didn't retaliate. Why should he retaliate? If you're really a follower of Shiva, you should wait and see what Shiva does and act accordingly. So everybody was at all of these parties, Bhrigu, Nandishwar, and Daksha were all at fault. They were all affected by anger, which arises from ego. And that action, no action, whether it's a blessing or a curse that arises from ego, is actually beneficial to anybody. So right, this does hurt a lot of people because it destroys the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas are the people who are supposed to explain the Vedas. So yes, that was a problem. Question: What was the wisdom of cursing a community instead of an individual? It's not like a random community. Daksha's the leader. Daksha's the leader of this community. It's not like he said, well, you're African, so I curse all Africans. No, he said, well, you are the leader of this police force. So I curse all this police force because you're the one who's training all this police force. So your bad behavior is on all this police force. It's not an incidental relationship like one of race. It's not an incidental relationship between Daksha and the Brahmanas. It's an actual relationship where Brahma is the teacher and the leader of the Brahmanas. Also, Nandishwar's curse was delivered to those Brahmanas who didn't protest. To those who didn't protest. Some of the Brahmanas tried to stop Daksha, which infuriated Daksha, but pleased Nandishwar. So Nandishwar exempted them from this curse, which is why you can still find some Brahmanas who study the Upanishads and understand the Vedas and are sincere and genuine. What's the wisdom of cursing anyway when the universe runs by karma? That's rather short-sighted. The universe runs by karma, so there will always be actions performed. And cursing of somebody is part of the action. Did they incur their own karma when they were dishing out the curses? Yeah, right? And it's immediately delivered. Daksha cursing the followers of Shiva incurs the Brahmanas getting the curse from the followers of Shiva, which incurs the followers of Shiva getting another curse from Brigu. Brahmanas curse more. Yes, Bardo, that's very good. This story is a beautiful illustration of how we all use reasoning to justify beliefs. And it's also an interesting story about how there's flaws everywhere. Almost everywhere. The only people in this story who are not flawed, main characters in the story, are Shiva and Brahma. The ones who are named, the only named characters in the story. Everybody else kind of behaved subpar. Or maybe the Brahmanas who protested. So there's flaws on all sides of issues. There's flaws. What happens if a regular person, non-Brahmin, curses? Does it add to karma and backfire later? It's a very popular belief. Curses, by the way, never really a good idea. Because a curse is an action. So you get involved in the reaction of the action. The curse is always a lousy idea. The only people that can really deliver curse are people that do a lot of pious deeds. And so therefore they're counteracting any negative effects rapidly. The only people that really deserve to punish others are people. In other words, what I'm saying very clearly and simply is the only people who deserve to punish others are people who are very good. People who aren't so good who punish other people get involved in that punishment. Also, people who aren't very good who try to punish other people don't really succeed very well. It's very weak. When a hypocrite tries to lecture you, nobody gives a shit what you say. But when a really sincere person speaks to you about something that you did wrong, it really affects you. So the curses from people that are not really so elevated are inconsequential, fairly inconsequential, relatively inconsequential. Marie, does karma ever only affect the individual, or is it like ripples in a pond? That's a good point. It always affects a network of people. That's very interesting, Rena. How do they not realize that this disrespects the ritual to Vishnu? So this shows you where their minds are at. This is why Brahma and Shiva didn't say anything. How did they not realize that this disrespects the ritual to Vishnu? Are they just stunned? Daksha is blinded by his feelings. Daksha is blinded. Daksha actually is an interesting character because at least in the Puranas, in the Vedas, there's not a lot of harsh words about Daksha, but because the Vedas are very Brahmana oriented. But in the Puranas, which are more everybody's books, Daksha is like a donkey. He's like really a bad guy kind of person. He's like an example of what not to do. I like how cool and calm Shiv is, but I wonder if he's ever too cool and too calm. No, he's not. And this is going to somebody's other question was like, well, it's karma, so why do you have to like curse? So Shiv is on that level. Like, stuff has to happen the way it has to happen. I'm here to perform a ritual for Vishnu. Is it going to happen? Let's do this. Oh, these guys are turning now to insulting Vishnu instead of worshiping him. I'm out. What makes one being superior to another? Basically, it's incidental, and it's in terms of the relationship, who supports the other person. The person who supports the other person is superior to them because the other person's depends upon it. But it's not like anybody is essentially superior or inferior to anybody else. But practically speaking, one person supports another. So, for example, father supports a child, mother supports a child. So father and mother are superior socially to the child. Alf wants to know how long I've been studying this stuff since 1988. Bardo, how do you distinguish between a real curse lovingly expressed by a master and a hurtful spillover of someone's ego? It's very, very, very easy. It may not be easy for the person being cursed because they're also blind, but for a third party, it's very easy. You don't feel anger. You can feel anger. It's like saying, can you tell the difference between hot and cold? You can tell the difference between hate and love. You can feel when something is being done out of love. All right, guys, I will call it quits here for the week. Yes, Rick. Study and try to put it into practice. Try to adjust yourself to what you're studying. That will happen naturally. So next, we're going to have a very interesting conversation between Sati and Shiva as she proposes that they go and try to be friends again with Daksha. That's what's going to happen next week. Thanks, Heitel. See you guys. Have a good weekend.